you can just take your seats. It's my great pleasure on behalf of ART to welcome you all here today. Steve Happold is the new director at ART, so we welcome him to ART. Tarariro is in charge of research as of today, or yesterday I believe. So welcome to them. Sandy Roberts, there she is. She is the chairman of the management board, and for my sins I'm also on that to just be an assistant. So you all might know that this regen started a number of years ago, and we have this regen group trying to look after our soils a little bit better. We had the beef school this year down in Bulawayo, and Francis came and spoke at that beef school, and he really enthralled us with what he had to say. And it's quite interesting, the different webs, how people come across your path. So Francis has history back here, family history of farming here. He's down in Natal, and Cook is good with her pointers, and she got to know Francis because he's got pointers, and it turns out my best man is one of his best friends in Nottingham Road. So we immediately had something to talk about other than regen. Anyway, he arrived last night, and we talked late into the night, and he's been helping ART. So ART, thanks to Oak Foundation and Ben Purcell-Gilpin, has been awarded a big chunk of money for Hugo. Where's Hugo? There he is. He's going to be filming this. And Hugo is going to be doing some research and go into the financial and what we need to do to transform to more regenerative type farming, and to see the profitability and how to go about it. So I'd invite you all to come to these days. The intention is to bring speakers in regularly. We will probably live stream it so that we've got a copy that we can send out, and so there's some memory, and we want to amplify this information. But without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Francis. He's from Natal, so he's okay.
Thanks, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. And I must say it's been a real privilege to be invited back to
Can you look? Got hold of here. Can you hear?
So it's been a privilege to come back here, and I really look forward to working with you folks. It's going to be a long session today. I'm not going to make it so it's easy. I've put a lot of work into it. I can't be here often, so I'm going to overload you with information. So please bear with me. I will start with the topic there, strategic approach, profitable and sustainable farming. It can be profitable from day one. A lot of questions. People say, "Oh, you want to go regen, you want to go sustainable, we go backwards in yield, go backwards in profits." It's bullshit. Unfortunately, that's it. You make money from day one, and there's no reason to go backwards. But the big trick behind this thing is having a strategic plan, having an idea, a goal in mind, and measure. You cannot do this game without measuring and knowing where you're going. You've got to map that journey. There are a couple of things I really must make. Sorry, I'm not used to talking to these things. That's bad. Yeah, so Mario was the first one to get me up through Anne Cook, who got me involved there, and then Doug and Anne had really made it possible for me to come up and see a number of farmers on this and to present here today. So hopefully I can share some of the information. The second part of the talk will be two young farmers, or two groups of farmers in the Western Cape, Valerian van der Bijl, and a lot of the older folk would know PK van der Bijl. PK's son is one of my clients. I've been working with him for a number of years now, and you'll see his story later on. There are two young farmers, the two Du Toit brothers, Derek and Jan Du Toit. I was introduced about 5-6 years ago. They have really got involved in this thing, and you'll have seen a couple of videos on your regen group. But I'm going to give you the story behind it and show you what they're doing. And hopefully they'll get inspired by these young farmers. And they are the future that we've got to start looking at and nurturing. And next year we'll have a workshop down in the Western Cape. And I'm going to invite all you folks down there. Come and see what these two youngsters are doing if you can. I know it's a long way to go, but the wine is good down there, so it's worth coming down. So the system is actually a system. I don't sell a product. I do sell products now, only out of necessity. And I'll explain that later on, but not now. So it's a biologically approach. And to put it into perspective, I farmed for 14 years in southern Natal, dairy, beef, sheep, timber and maize. And the goalposts moved the whole time. So when I started with 60 cows, I was making money, but not a lot of money, and then it was 120 cows, then it was 200 cows. The next step was 450, up to 1,000 cows, and I really didn't want to pull teats for the rest of my life. And unfortunately in farming, it's a really bad business model. You buy at retail price, you sell the product at wholesale price. I mean, that's really sensible business. So I decided to get out of the game, paid off whatever I owed the bank. I borrowed a lot of money at 28% interest back in the early 80s. I had to have something for brains, but it worked. And I decided to move to the Western Cape. And I was able to look at where I could have made a difference in farming. My thesis at Sedara was cover crops, green manures and lay crops. And believe me, 14 years, I didn't do one green manure, one cover crop or one lay crop. I mean, that is really intelligent. So when I came back into consulting, in actual fact, I didn't want to do consulting, it suddenly happened. And I started looking at soil health first. So I started the whole cover crop, multi-species cover crops in orchards and vineyards. Now everyone thought I was completely off the charts. They thought I should have a ponytail and an earring, because it was unheard of. In those days, Bayer paid prizes for the farmer at the neatest vineyard. The one that didn't have a weed in it, didn't have anything out of place. They were groomed vineyards. They were absolute monoculture. Compaction, massive problem. Over-irrigation, runoff, disease, everything was there because these plants were under unbelievable stress. So I started with cover crops, and I was chased around the vineyard a few times by farmers when I put rippers in and loosened the soils, and we changed things. But the first breakthrough came when I put a cover crop in, and we took a Chardonnay from 3 tons a hectare at 3,000 rand a ton. We were able to take it up to 8 tons at 9,000 rand a ton, and became a special reserve for Longridge. So that was a really big breakthrough. So I started on the biology, then I looked at irrigation, scheduling to see we were wasting money. Electricity is cheap, water was available, and farmers abused both resources. But now they can't abuse those. And then I started looking at the soil chemistry. And I looked at all the ways you folks have been indoctrinated to use NP and K. And part of this presentation, I'll show you what is actually in the soil and how much is actually bioavailable. And my top farm has over 2 million rand per hectare of N, P and K lockup in these soils. Per hectare. And 220 hectares of pasture. The trick is now to try and unleash that potential. So that's where we started on that one. I'm going to look at the crop rotations, and this is probably one of the biggest mistakes that modern farming did. And we must remember that we are the generation of the instant farmer. It was a packet, drum or can that could provide a solution for every occasion. So we didn't think of farming. And that was a massive problem for us. We knew better, but it was easier to go to the co-op and buy something, or go to the fertilizer company and buy something. And then you got into recipe farming. You plant maize, you plant with XYZ, you plant sugarcane, you plant with XYZ, and top taste of 101. That is the recipe. It is not a recipe. There is no recipe. In 20, whatever it is, years I've been consulting, I have yet to use an off-the-shelf fertilizer recommendation. Not one. So all my blokes are on prescription blends. We've actually cut back on NPs and Ks, and we started to use residual fertility. And the funny part is that we've got up to 200 years of residual fertility in a lot of our soils. And that's to take off 10, 12 ton maize crops year in, year out if we farm it correctly. And that wouldn't be a monoculture, it would be a multi-species. Conservation tillage, as a crop rotation, as I said, there's a bit of a problem. People haven't been practicing crop rotation. It was maize, it was maize, soya, maize, or it would be, that isn't a crop rotation, that's 2 crops. Getting into some of the big cropping is what you want to look at. And I was in South Dakota, and Dwayne Beck's got his clients on a 7-cycle rotation before it comes back to maize, or soya, or whatever it is. His yields are 400%. He gives a zero response to NP and K. Zero. He's sitting with 2,000 earthworms a square meter. They ran out of silo space on the farm. They've had to go and hire more silo space. So those farms are all known as Becky's, from Grain Beck. And he's their guru and a hell of a nice guy. And one mistake he never made was he didn't have the animal factor in. And recently he's brought the animal factor in, and suddenly the yields have gone up again and the soils have improved. So, I mean, you can teach an old dog something. Conservation tillage, and I mean, we started conservation tillage right back in the early 80s, and a lot of people said, oh, no-till won't work. You earn the right to cut. You earn the right to go no-till. You earn the right to cut fertilizer. It's a process, it's a system that you've got to put in place, and that's hopefully I can share that. Lowering external input costs, and that's one of the big ones. Fertilizer, seed, and I'm going to speak about seed, especially in the multi-species cover crops and pastures. And unfortunately, I do have a few seed companies, and please don't take offense. It's done for the sake of the farmer. So please, if you're going to shoot me off. The cover crops play a major role in what we're doing. And even in crops like macadamias, walnuts, pecans, we run multi-species cover crops, and we have an animal factor in there. Vineyards, we've got them in there now. So that's where we're going with that. Integrated pest management, it's something that we should all be starting to look towards. You can buy it out of the packet, or you can start putting in systems that will attract beneficial insects, predatory insects, pollinators. And we've got to integrate livestock into the system. I have yet to see a soil rehabilitate quicker than having livestock versus no livestock. You cannot rehabilitate effectively and quick enough without having an animal factor in. Yes, you might have to go and put in animal handling facilities, and I think at the beef school, you blokes inspired me with the portable handling facilities. I mean, that's the future in the way I see it. A big dairy now will cost 15 to 20 million rand to put a dairy up to milk 1,000 cows. With a bit of thought on a portable dairy, move the dairy to the cows. Could you do it a lot cheaper? Is it more sustainable? Do you need the dung to wash the parlour down? Could you leave the dung on the field rather than the parlour, and without having the pumping costs? These are something I think farmers should take into account. So, as I said, I work from a soil up approach, and you've probably seen very similar sides. It's soil quality, it's the chemical balance, the biological balance, the physical and the physical properties of the soil. And unfortunately, under tillage systems, monoculture, we destroy that whole thing. I'll show you some slides on what happens if you get carbon right, get structure right, what happens to water holding capacity. And then the end thing, what we should be looking at is higher yields with higher quality at a lower cost. And it can be done, and we're proving it over and over again. This is one of my soils down in Natal. I've been working on the soil since 2011. You can see the carbon percentage is at 5% carbon measured. At 40 centimeters is where we're sitting at 5%. We're now sitting at 3% at 70 centimeters. So that's significant. If we look at the root development, and these are ryegrass, multi-species ryegrass pastures, and I think I've got a slide in there, but you'll see these roots are right down and over 1 meter deep. So we're drought-proofing crops. These soils used to hold about 20,000 litres of water per 30 centimetres to a depth of 30 centimetres per hectare. We're now holding over 2 million litres of water to the same depth. These crops are drought-proof. I don't have to irrigate as much as possible. They get rain. I can use that water elsewhere, and we've expanded the operation now because we've got spare water. That is where earthworm is cocooned on soil temperature. You can see the earthworm activity there. We're looking at the carbon, but what we look at is the transition zones that have moved down. It's getting chocolate brown as we go down. So this is the pasture I often take farmers to, and we had a talk this year. We had Dr. Jill Captain now from America. She'd been there 5 years ago, and she couldn't believe the change in 5 years. There are problems that we're still learning. I don't think anyone can say they're an expert because we are still learning. And it's up to the from the farmers I learn. They're the ones who are taking it on the chin. I've got a lot of farmers who believe in me, and we discuss things before they implement. And it's thanks to the farmers who do put these in practice and allow me to go to the farms, show their farms off, And I have yet to find one of my farmers who's not happy to show his farm off, good or for bad, because they're wanting help. This is what it's all about. It's the root exudates that feed biological communities in soil. Those communities are converting carbon, organic, the energy, the carbohydrates into carbon, and that's what we actually see. It's those root exudates are critical, and every single species of plant that we put in leaks out different carbohydrate groups, feeding different biological communities. And that is what we need. We need the diversity in the soil. And in saying that, I spent time in America going to see multi-species pastures, and unfortunately, we see it happening in South Africa now as well, is where people are throwing 10, 15, 20, 30 species of plant species at a soil. It is actually, it's not science that. It's what they're throwing in the kitchen sink and hope something will stick. So I did a series of talks last year, and it's called Planting with Purpose. Have a strategy, have a goal in mind. What are you trying to achieve? Is it to relieve compaction, grow carbon, feed cows, improve, you've got to have a goal in mind. And so having a purpose of why you're putting a seed in the ground. And I'm going to go right now up front. We're seeing a lot of seed companies who are selling pre-mixed seed. And that is bad science, chaps. It's absolutely bad science. You've got a seed of, let's take triticale, sterling rye, one of those. Those seeds can go down to 2.5 centimeters and germinate effectively, no problem. Clover, 0.5 centimeter is the maximum depth before you start losing plants. At 1 centimeter, you're down to 45% germination. Chicory, 0.25 of a centimeter, 2.5 millimeters. That is the seeding depth. So putting all these seeds into one bag and planting them at 2.5 centimeters, or planting on the surface and hoping they're going to get down there, and you're going to lose it to birds, or you're going to bury it. You're not going to get germination. We had a case now where a bloke put down 55 million seeds per hectare on a seed company's advice, premix. If you work it backwards, it's 5.5 seeds per square centimeter. There is no way that plant will germinate and give it genetic potential will come out of it. You will not get it. You are wasting your money and you are being smoked by that. So rather, get your planters set up, plant at the right depth. There are a lot of very, very good planters out there, and I'm actually advocating now a 3-bin planter with the big seeds in the front bin, go down between 1.5 and 2.5 centimeters, the next bin between 0.5 centimeter, 1 centimeter, and the others on the surface with a proper roller, and we still roll with a Cambridge roller behind it, and we're getting the results at far, far lower rates. And if I can give you anything to take home from here, look at your seeding depths, look at your seeding rates, look at the compatibility between your seeds. Because a lot of you blokes are planting a lot and hoping for results. We can't just hope in this game. We've got to farm it. So we can have a look at these soils. The ones on the left, the ones on the left are macadamia orchard that I'm doing in the Lowveld. That's a 1,000-hectare farm. We're running we harvest over 1,000 impala off that orchard. So having the animal factor in a multi-species cover crop in there to feed that, but we've got the carbon from 0.5% to over 2% now in those orchards, and the yields are going up, the water consumption's down. In actual fact, there's a bit of a problem. They're complaining, last year they complained they had too wet orchards. We couldn't get enough water out of the soil. The one in the middle is the one that I showed you. You can see the transition of the color of the soil, and then the one on the right is where that's in the Western Cape. See a really sandy, played out soil, no carbon. Traditionally, those soils were about 2% carbon load down in the Tsitsikamma area. There's no reason why their soil degraded to that extent, other than bad farming. These blokes are using 2.25 tons of urea per hectare. That's 1,025 kgs at N. You change the carbon-nitrogen ratio in the soil. If you want to speed up compost decomposition, add nitrogen. You're going to blow off so much carbon in that process if you do it. And they were doing it to the soil. They were blowing their carbon off as fast as they could grow it. And that was one of the things. So those are the real challenge at that farm, because we had to alleviate compaction. We had to build those carbons, and they're not right yet. I mean, it's going to take me years and years to rehabilitate that farm. Okay, you've all seen this soil food web, and it's a really, okay, okay, there we are. Now we're going the other way. Okay. Yeah. Just going to go back a bit. But those slides that you saw, those ones there. This farm on the left. Oh, nightmare, this one. Okay, the sheep in there. Just to give you an idea, there's 7,000 sheep in that flock. This is we'll do this case study a bit later on. The one in the middle is a beef farm, multi-species cover crop after cabbages with beef. Potato crop on the right, and where we took those yields, there's a seed potato crop where he'd be happy with about 30 tons marketable seed. He's sitting in 50 tons. But we did that crop with 20 kgs of P and 0 K. That takes some serious trust. The bottom is a chicory lucerne up in Dundee. Fortunately, he planted ryegrass, Perennial ryegrass, and the heat has killed it off. But the match made in heaven was a chicory lucerne. It really, really, really works. If I had to change anything there, I'd add 10% burst with trefoil to prevent blight. So it is something that you'd like to consider. The 2 dairy cows are dry cows. That was maize silage that had been planted, and straight after maize silage they put in a multi-species cereal with brassicas in there, and the dry cows and heifers went into that. And then the bottom one is some dryland maize, and I think that was about 15 tons a hectare, but we're doing that on 160 N, 20p, no K. So it can be done, but you earn the right to go this route. These are blokes who've worked with me for a long time. As I said, you'd have seen these slides like this. The big one that I'm really interested in is the earthworms. They're the biggest ones that actually tell me the story. We're doing tests now using nematodes, beneficial versus pathogenic nematodes, to tell you about soil health, the enrichment index. So we do use nematodes, they're not all bad. So that is something that we do measure, and we will get to that. That's really what it's all about, is understanding we grow roots. I don't care what happens above ground, because I know if I can get below ground right, if I know if I can grow roots, I'm going to get seriously good crops. And I'm going to bring it in here now. I was telling Doug and Hugo this morning, was that we've seen a massive rise in gluten intolerance in population groups. We've seen a massive rise in lactose intolerance. It's actually really interesting. The studies have been done that in the last 50 years, there's been a 10-fold increase in nitrogen applications to cereals. This year on a very, very good pasture. I wanted to see what actually happens. So we brewed bacteria that was sold to, and it could do all these wonderful things. I then measured the biology before, we had controls, we measured afterwards. I set those soils back a whole year in biology. I set the crop back a whole year. Because we disturbed the balance that we had created since 2011. So you're very aware of what you're putting down and why you're putting it down. There are a lot of packets of stuff out there that claim to do a lot of good things, and some of them do good things. And I'll say again, on played out dead soils, they work wonderfully. We tried EM, that's familiar with EM. 2 years of EM on a dead soil works. Year 3, continue right now, you won't get a response. The biology catches up with you, and then you get a 0 response. You put all that effort after that, you're actually wasting your money. But put diversity down, put food down for these things, and you'll be okay. I do a lot of trial work. So these ones, we're looking at the different rooting systems. These are all, those 4 on the left are all different legumes. There's red clover, there's fava beans, there's sun hemp, they're all in there. They all have got different root structures, and they're different types of rhizobia feeding different communities. The one on the right is I did a farmer's day down in Underberg where we did 70 blocks, trial blocks of different combinations of cover crops, so we could show farmers what they look like, whether they work, and then we started putting combinations together so farmers could see the combinations, how they work, and then we put grazing strategies in place. So we defoliated to what a cow would do or a sheep would do, and left enough residual to see what the effect was. And so these trials have to be done, and that's how we've done them. So we know the ones that work or don't work, and you're going to see a slide later on of where it's working properly, because the farmer's got a strategy, he's got a plan in mind, and it's working. As I said, each species has got different structure, root exudates, and that's what this whole plan is. So when I'm starting to plan, we start looking at why we're doing it. Red clover, on a pure stand, will give you between 65 and 100 kgs in. Look at the amount of hairy veg will do for you. But be careful about hairy veg in a cropping system. The seed is hard, it will regrow, and it can become a bit of a problem. I did it in a vineyard down the Western Cape, and I had triticale that was meant to be planted with it. The triticale failed, and I had 7 or 8 hectares of veg that grew over the whole vineyard, over every single Y, every cordon Y, everything was covered with it. It was just a green mat of veg. The farmer was a little bit grumpy, to say the least. He had to get labour in to pull it off, and he poisoned, and I actually didn't get an invite back to the farm again. So it happens. The other one is for every kilogram or percent of organic matter that is biologically active, and the word is biologically active, can give you up to 84 kilograms of nitrogen into the system as a slow release in. It's not a quick fix, but for every mil of rain in a thunderstorm can give you up to 1 kilogram of nitrogen. But your soils have to be prepared, and we talk about priming soils. The biology has to be there to receive the N and convert it to plant available N. So for some reason they've dropped the word soil priming, but it's a major goal that we should be working towards, in trying to get our soils biologically active to do the job of solubilizing phosphates, mineralizing, and making plant available. That's what we actually need. So priming is a main goal that we actually go to. That gives you some sort of an idea of, you can see the bacteria and the fungi. These are grown on Petri dish and on agar solutions, so you can identify what they are. But in here are the sugars. These little fungi that are actually leaking out food for biology. So the fungi are actually feeding bacteria. So these things talk to each other. Plants talk to each other. So we've got to be aware of, when we disturb it, what we actually disturbing. And most of you will have heard about mycorrhiza. Mycorrhiza, you can go about the packet and drum, but they're all in the soils. They've been hammered because we plough, we disc, we rake the hyphae. They take a long time to re-establish, and you need host plants for them. And unfortunately, crops like canola, the brassicas are not host crops for mycorrhiza. So having some diversity with those crops, so you can keep your mycorrhiza flourishing, is the way to go. And they leak out a thing called glomalin. Glomalin is the glue that actually then sticks the soil and starts the structure. So without the mycorrhiza, without the glomalin, you just can't get the structure right. So unfortunately, using fungicides and tillage are the biggest enemy of growing mycorrhiza. As I said, you have the ones that are dependent, highly dependent on mycorrhiza. You can see them on the left. Wheat and others aren't so dependent, but non-host plants are your brassicas. Absolutely non-host. So if you're going to grow those crops, please put something in there that the mycorrhiza has a host plant. And these mycorrhiza can colonize a whole rugby field, no problem, under the right conditions. So here you can actually see, this is in Nebraska. We took soils from the no-till land versus tilled land, and they were separated by about 1 meter. And you can see the difference. This one looks like a wet cow pat on the right, and then no-till's got the structure, the color, everything. And that had the same rain on the same day. So you can actually see what actually happens when you lose structure. Biggest things that we're starting to do is we're starting to try and drive the systems. You've got to get the carbon cycle back up. That's oxygen diffusion into the soil, microbial respiration, CO2 out. That hits the plant, then you get sugars formation, root exudate, and you get the cycle going. We've got to get these cycles back up and flourishing. nitrogen cycle, same sort of thing, phosphate solubility. On average, about 4.5% of phosphate in your soil is probably bioavailable at the best. So 95%, if you look at your phosphate levels and you multiply that by whatever it is, that's what you're probably sitting at, and we've done these tests, they're there. Sulfur cycles, unfortunately, a lot of modern fertilizers, urea, MAP, DAP, KCl, no sulfur. You need the sulfurs in there for nitrogen assimilation. You need them for the amino acids. You've got to have these in there. So you need your cysteine, thiamine, amine. You need these things without having sulfur. And then you want metal chelation. Then you've got the physical action, the microchilling structure, water balance. Yeah. So those things. That's just a byproduct of where we're going. Earthworms, that's a big one. We use it as an indicator of soil health as well. I'll show you a soil later on where we did an earthworm count the other day. He's sitting at 5.5 tons of earthworm mass per hectare at 15 centimeters. Each earthworm moves about 2.5 kilos of nitrogen per annum. So when you're starting to put real populations down, that's what your microchilling is about. These ones on the right, these are from Veld up in near Stutterheim. Those earthworms, the record is the world record of just on 7 meters of earthworm. Yeah. So you can actually Google it, you'll see it, it's there, it's a thing about this big. Most people will take a snake to it, a stick to the snake. They're big, and you walk on these things, you can actually feel them, they roll under your feet. That's from one earthworm. So, as I said earlier on, one of the things that we do a lot of measurements. I do ask my farmers to measure because I cannot make a plan. The farmer cannot proceed if he doesn't know what he's got. And I don't measure on these, I don't measure every single land. We have selected blocks on the farm, and those are my benchmark blocks. And we measure these. So the Solvita, we've got 2 soils incubating now, and Hugo will actually help me later on explain what's happened on each block. And hopefully we've got a result there. These are measuring microbial respiration, CO2 emissions. We call it bug breath. And from that you can actually then calculate carbon sequestration, and from that nitrogen mineralization. These are tools in giving you the possibility to start reducing N. So that's the Solvita. The microbiometer is a rapid test. I think some of you folks are familiar with what it looks like. That is actually a rapid field test. It takes about 20 odd minutes to do a test. You can actually measure the bacteria to fungi in your soil, the ratios and the quantities. And you can see where diversity plays a role. It's a really quick test. You can do your compost with it. So that one works. Then we're using Sporotech. Sporotech is a really wonderful laboratory in Stellenbosch, attached to the University of Stellenbosch. And they're measuring my bacterial and fungal using Simpsons and Shannon. Those are 2 different processes. But they're measuring enzyme activity. And here we're trying to measure the bacteria responsible for urease, glucosidase. Glucosidase is the root oxidate eating, and then the phosphatase, both alkaline and acid. So we can measure what's actually happening in the soil. And there's a very strong correlation. So what we did, we tested, we then apply in nitrogen and phosphate, and then we test again. And every time we did that, we set our phosphatase backwards, and we set our urease backwards, every single time. So you're starting putting food down, these little fellows don't have to work because there's an abundance of food. There's no reason for them to get out of bed in the morning and work. So unfortunately, we set our communities back. Every time you apply fertilizer, remember there is a consequence for it. I don't say you're going to get away with it entirely, but can we start reducing it? Can we manage it better? I think we could do a hell of a lot more to cut, and that's part of the process. This is the CO2 emitters, and these are the ones we're testing now. So the petals all start off blue, and as they absorb carbon dioxide, they change colour. We've got one of those readers here, which will then calculate what are carbon dioxide emissions, and then we can calculate from there. This is a field that we've actually done. That was that was last year sometime. And you can look at the colour was 5 versus the control. So you always have to measure against something. But what you started to look at the nitrogen saving, or nitrogen mineralized, is 85 versus 9.5 kilos. That's money. You look at the crop requirements, and that I've put 120 and on that one. The desired nitrogen, the carbon to nitrogen ratio was 12 to 1. we're sitting on a 2-to-1. I've got these soils way, way, way too hot. They're actually chewing through my carbon and battling to get carbon to stick there. I need more woody plants in there to slow. I need C4 plants in there. The problem is I'm on a dairy pasture. I have got nothing to put in my pastures. We thought of putting wood, lignin in there. That's not going to work. It's going to cause more trouble. So we sit on a bit of a problem on this one. If you look at here, the big number that I want to show you here is your end saving, but there's the big one, is your carbon sequestration, 64 tons a hectare per annum. Versus control of 22 tons. And we're starting to look at, there's a lot of talk about the carbon credits, etc., etc. The sort of the latest thinking that we're talking about is actually nitrogen credits. Get rewarded for cutting nitrogen, rather than trying to monitor and measure carbon. Qatar Airlines at the moment paying $100 per ton of nitrogen saved on an audit. So if you're cutting 60 kgs, it's $6,000 a hectare for nitrogen credits. You have to farm in order to get your credits. You cannot put food security at risk if you're going to get rewarded for cutting nitrogen. So there's a big reward system here. The microbiome we've spoken about. Then these are the things that we do with Sporotech. So you can look at all the different enzyme activity. Nematodes, this is a really nice one that we've been doing for a long time now. And that's looking at your pathogenic nematodes, the plant parasites, very high, 58%. We've got a problem there. That tells me that I need to go put a biofumigant in the soil. And unfortunately, there are a couple of companies out there selling white or black mustard, and they're calling it white or black mustard. Unfortunately, they're not. They're selling, in one case, it's called hedge mustard. It is not a biofumigant. As far as I know, in South Africa, there's only one white mustard that's been tested all the way through to measure the ITC, or the biofumigant properties of it. And it's, the others are, unfortunately, haven't gone through the hard yards. The farmers are buying something that is not going to do what it's meant to do as a fumigant in the soil. So the blokes should go back and get their house in order if they're going to be selling these things. Then we look at the bacteriivores, the fungivores, the omnivores, and the predators, and then the root extract feeders. And you can see the soil out of balance. In no root extract, no predators, in no fungal feeders. This soil is bacterially dominant soil. We're chewing through the organic matter. Things aren't going right on this piece of land. And then we started to look at it. We're way, way too high on the enrichment index. Structural web, we're a little bit low because these soils are way too hot. I've got to slow that soil down. So that's sort of our challenge, and that's when we're starting to put mixes together to try, and that's planting with purpose. What are we trying to do? I need to slow the process down. That's where my big work on this farm is. Other things we're going to start looking at, and we do a lot of measurements. Compaction, I use a penetrometer, we're looking at soil structure, soil moisture infiltration, that we've just done a lot of work on that. Soil temperature, a lot of people are farming, you're planting without moisture and at too low temperatures. You've seen blokes planting in the Natal Midlands at soil temperatures of 8, 9, 10 degrees with no soil moisture. And then they wonder why a warm season grass like maize comes up very slowly, the stuff planted in with moisture, warm temperature, 2 months later is outperforming it. Makes sense. And we've just seen some really strange farming practices taking place. Okay. So here what we're doing here is we're doing infiltration trials, and then from that we do soil moisture holding capacity. A lot of pivots, a lot of irrigation systems are sold to farmers, but no one has done the hard yards. What is the water holding capacity of soil? What are the infiltration rates of these soils? No one knows. Irrigation companies are making an absolute mint out of you blokes, but no one is telling you how to manage that thing properly. And that's the reality. I see this every day. And then we look at compaction. So what we were looking at here is, I took a really, really, really compacted soil, and that was the depth there was 1 centimeter. I could get that probe in. That's it. We put these infiltration rings, the double ring infiltrometer, and we managed to get it down to about 8 centimeters, 9 centimeters. Then I was doing other trials where I was able to get, in that one, we were able to go down, just by changing, we actually put that stuff there, in there, and we were able to get the water down to 75 centimeters in 1 hour, but we took in, and that one, I think I've got the numbers in here, that I think we took in 60 mils of moisture where the other did 3 or 4 mils. That's it. So, you know, we have to do ongoing trials, unfortunately. Not expect the farmer to be anything the whole time. There's your infiltration ring, because that's what we set up. So you can actually see how those things work. So what we've got is controls. We measure in the middle here. We're measuring the rate at which it drops. We're using the outer ring to balance the water. We keep that at the same level as the inner ring, and then we can actually measure that and calculate the water infiltration rate, and then take straw out, weigh it, and then dry it, and then weigh it, and then we know the water held in place. Soil temperatures, I said, these were the temperatures the farmer was planting maize. 6.7 degrees. And then he wonders why the crop didn't go. Give you some sort of indication of where carbon at 0.29%, about 80,000 litres per hectare. These are sort of figures, but what it doesn't take into account is soil type. It doesn't take in carbon content. It doesn't take a lot of things in, or it takes carbon but not soil type. But here you're looking at, we can get to nearly 3.5%, you're up to 1 million litres. We're getting those figures now at 2 million litres on the same, at that level. So something is actually changing. But you have to do it with measurement. You can't, this is not guesswork anymore. We can't afford to guess in this game. Another big area, and we've seen this in the fertilizer companies. They come to the farm and they say, we'll take your soil sample for you chaps, but buy our fertilizer from us. That's a big no. Get out, take the soil samples properly. You take that control of that. Send them to your laboratory. You make a decision. My goal is to teach you guys how to read a soil sample, interpret it, get the right fertilizer for the soil. They must sell you something. You buy from them. You tell them what you want. And the farmers I've got who do that, they tell them, we want this. I don't want the treat you want, I want this. And we've seen a massive response to that. That doesn't make me very popular. But I'm not here for popular. So if you can take a bad sample, with contaminant, with sampling error, then we get to the laboratory error, then a decision-making error, and we don't get the desired result. And that's a fact, and we've seen this the whole time. It's one of our biggest problems that we have. So here we're using the satellite imagery using NDVI imagery. We take the images over 4 seasons, or 5 seasons in this case, and we measure that, we take the NDVI and they convert it to what we call a productivity map. So the areas of blue are 2 higher regions. So that's its average, lows are low. So there's a bit of, the big gun's not working on the edge, I would say. That's the center of the pivot. But the vast majority of that is sort of staying in the medium range. We've got to lift that up to all be blue. And that's if we can get these soils to do simultaneously. This isn't soil type. This is nothing to do. These soils are in Zambia, so you know where they are. And we use that for soil sampling. So in this case, simply, I'm a big, I shoot myself on foot regularly. I don't believe in grid sampling. I don't believe in grid sampling. Grid sampling is only measuring chemistry, that's it. Zigzag plant is only measuring a chemical. What about soil type? What about management? How do they play a role in how the crop is performing? No one tells you about those things. So I'm using these, we call it smart sampling, zone sampling. I can then break this on, if I wanted, I could break it in half, and I'd send one sample from there, one from there, one from there, one from there. I wouldn't worry too much about, on the outside, I'd go and have a look at these series and say, what's gone wrong here? Could it be drainage? Could it be water? You can go and look at ground truthing. And that's one of the big things. Say, use these images, go and have a look on the ground and see, are they doing what they're meant to be doing? Why is it not performing the same? So again, in our soil samples, we ask a lot of information from the soils. You know, we measure everything that we can measure. You do carbon nitration, calcium-magnesium ratio. I'm not going to go into chemistry here. And then we look at the leaf samples as a measure. Is the plant seeing what the soil can give? That's what a leaf sample is. Are they talking to each other? And this is for dairy. So you look at the protein, 25.1% protein. I think I'll be quite happy with that as a livestock farming. This is some of the work we're doing now. We're measuring the amount of nitrogen, phosphate and potassium total in the soil, and then you look at the available, and then you look at the percent available here. So, of the, I'm going to worry here, there's 854p and 3,800 per hectare in the soil. But if you look at the availability, it's 23p and 116k. Or if you look at the percentage, 2.7 and 3%. That is available, the rest is locked up. That's your money that you put in the piggy bank, and we've got to try and unlock that. So that's what we're working on at the moment. We've done thousands and thousands of these. The picture, the best I've had now is like 15% phosphate and potassium available. We're still leaving with 85% lockup. Here's the big one, is carbon is king. Everything is held together like that. So you guys should be focusing on carbon. I think we're going to take a bit of a break now. It's a bit hot in here, and I think we need a couple of minutes, if you don't mind. Maybe we have 10 minutes. So if we could take 10 minutes and then come back, because there's a lot for you guys to digest in one hit. Thanks for your time. Looking at nitrate dominant. We look at clover, nitrate dominant. So when you start putting ryegrass or put on the same road, then we started to arrest me for blight. What happens if I go and put in peas? Now I've got amino acids, ureas and amides. You start looking at beans, more ureas. And you start balancing these things to try and balance what's going into the rumen, but you're also putting protein groups into the soil, feeding the biology downstairs. So you're not only feeding the rumen, but you're also mitigating the risk of blight. And this is what we were talking about, is in the dairy cow or the beef cow, or whatever you're selling, if you're selling grass-fed animals, if you start playing around with different groups in here, then I think we're going to start seeing a very strong argument for grass-fed beef as a protein now. And I think this is a marketing thing that you blokes could be climbing into in time. Looking at rooting depths, and you've got to know where these things are. I'll just put that in quickly. These are different roots: sweet clover, Phacelia, red clover, and radish, all doing different jobs in the soil. You can see the tilling, these radishes go down. This is this farm that I'm going to show you a bit later on. That's their mix as a cash crop. Oats, canola, field peas. Look at the seeding rate. The oats I'll probably cut back a little bit, but the interesting part, they didn't have any rust, they had no aphids, they had no bollworm. And that's, I'll show you what happens in this one, and that's the side, the next part of the talk will go. I think, is that it? I think. Okay, this is going back to those soils. Oh, there we go. This is what I wanted to actually. Come on. Look at the earthworms. 5 tons of earthworms a hectare. Come on. A bit too excited on this thing. I mean, you just look at these things, and these folks have just done a glyphosate, 2,4-D paraquat trial to see what happens to earthworm populations. Roundup did nothing to earthworm population. Paraquat and 2,4-D knocked out 90% of the earthworms. But the rules behind Roundup, I'm not saying any herbicide is good or bad. Every herbicide is going to have a damage. Know how to handle Roundup. Roundup has got rules. Water pH, 4. Use a 2% ammonium sulfate solution there. Buffer your water. You don't, the operative word is glyphosate. Phosphate fixes to with the calcium, iron, aluminium in the water. Ambient temperature, between 14 and 25, 26 degrees. You need nutrients, need the herbicide to translate into the root zone. If you come in too late in the afternoon, you don't get nutrient transfer to the root zone. Get those rules right, cut your rates. You can do it every time. Low applications, 100 litres of water hectare. You don't need to go high. You know, this going throwing more is better. Nonsense, absolute nonsense. You get chemical scorching, you don't get chemical kill. This one here, this is where these blokes, and these are Jan and Derek. I'll show you their farm. 168 kilograms of seed. Unbelievably naive. I mean, that is just way, 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 way too much. I understand the concept of diversity. Pick a couple of those, but reduce those rates. You cannot go and putting in 60 kgs of carbamide, 40 kgs of lupin, it's 30 kgs of field peas. They're all good, but when I went into the seed count, the germination count, what left in the field, guess what? We probably had 10% of that. 10%. They were doing the right thing. Their thought process was right, but they missed a trick. You know, so you started to look at the seed per square meter too high. And then again, they were planting at the wrong depth. But again, you know, we've rectified it. They're nice guys. Looking at, I'm not going to go through that one. But here, we want to look at it. How many times does a cow defecate? How much area is covered by it? You know, affected per year per animal. These things are quite important in this for rebuilding soil health. You've got to know where you're going with this thing. The big question was, you know, phosphate. Do I have to on pasture, on multi-species, do I have to feed pasture? Well, if you actually look at how much phosphate is coming through on the different ones, you could probably calculate whether they need phosphate, what the requirements are, and then if you actually look at, there's protein is there, but you look at the phosphate at 3.6 grams per kilograms of dry matter. Animal eating body mass, you can work it out for yourself. 10 kg dry matter, 36 grams, more than enough P. Am I right, Doug? Why put more P down? It's coming in through the rumen. Sorry. Okay. But again, you know, when I started to put recommendations, we started looking at the combinations we put together. Look at the seeding rate, 16 kgs a hectare, 14 kgs a hectare. I wanted to show what happens if we do it to the black oats, red oats, the biggest seeds. But if I go at 43 kgs, what's going to happen? And I'm busy doing a program right now to work out seeds per kilogram. And I can tell you right now, I'll be 17 million seeds on the bottom one. 1.7 seeds per square centimetre. It's wrong. I've got to change that whole thing. And that's the thinking that we're starting to do. Seed guidelines, I'm not going to go through too much on those. You know, we've got to decide on this whole thing. This is going to jump on me now. Again, understand when to go and plant. Is there enough water? What are the inoculants? You know, you've got to know these things and do your homework. You know, I'm trying to get the goal rather than someone sell you something. Why don't you go and say, well, this is what I want to buy? If I can shift the goal back to the farmer, let him be the decision maker. Let him tell them what he wants. I think you'll probably find a lot more profitable in this game. I'm going to leave this presentation with Hugo, so if you need anything, please contact him. I have no problem in sharing my information because I'm sharing it here anyway. Why not share it further? Will hopefully help make a difference. And I said, birds for triple with Lucerne, bloat free. If I can mitigate bloat, right there, it's going to be one of the things I'm going to go and do. All right, sorry. Can we go back on one, please? You guys can go and download this on the web. It's worth it. It really is worth it. It's something to give you some guideline of what these plants do, why you want them, and there you'll see a cover crop where they're planting veggies directly into cover crop. Okay, I'm just going to go through fairly quickly. Oh, that's the wrong way. Okay, so these are sort of things that, oh, sorry, we're going to go back, sorry, I'll just go through these really quickly. To give you an idea, we do infiltration trials, flood irrigation in Arizona. These are the trials I'm doing on the infiltration trials, so you can actually see we testing products the whole time. What works, what doesn't work. You know, there's nothing I'm going to go and tell a farmer to do or advise him to do if I know it's not going to work. So we've got some really interesting products here sold by big companies making these radical claims. We put them in the trials and they failed. And you go to the company and say, you know, you've got a bit of a problem and they don't like you for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway. But that's not my role to be pleasant. Okay. Oh, God, I'm going the wrong way again. Okay, so a lot of things we try and do is sampling coaching, try and get the farmer to do it himself. Oh, this thing has really gone haywire. we try and do, again, so a lot of what I try to do is get the reports to you, try and make your life a lot easier so you can make the right decisions. And that's really where we're going with this. A big debate on that. But then I'll just show you some sort of quick ones. Profit margin, where we started the farm out of 155 hectares, we had 190 hectares. We lifted the milk from 3 million litres to 7.9 million litres. If you look at the carrying capacity on that, it's fairly significant. They have had a price increase, so that's accounts for a bit of a better margin. Typical way we're grazing it. The beef on pasture, this is quite a nice one. We've increased the carrying capacity from control to treat at 10 to 20 cows. If you can double the carrying capacity, you look at the ADGs, 7 to 8 kg is a bit too low versus 1.4. I think that's okay. And then you look at the dollar difference per hectare. That becomes profitable. We can, so, we look at citrus yields and we do a lot of satellite imagery. So I could go through a lot of this work. I'm not going to carry on with that. I think I'm going to move on to just the two case trial studies in the Cape, just so you can see two blokes who are implementing it with vision. Let's see where we go with that. Hugo, can ask me on that other talk on. Look at the rainfall there. 300 mils, less than 300 mils of rain, and we're sitting at reasonable yields. So again, it's all about profit driven. But with this farm now is at 30 kgs of MAP a plant, total fertilizer bill, which is reasonable. The two young farmers, Derek and his brother Jan, and Valerian from the Vale, PK's son. So just to show you what they're up to, Valerian has actually been really, really good for me in the business. He's actually promoted me. He's organised Farmer's Day. He's pretty much like his dad, and he'd rather drop fishing through, go and shoot a bird, or farming and go and shoot a bird or fish or something like that. So sometimes I find himself Valerian where he's in the Congo catching goliaths or something like that. But he's a good person. So this is young Derek, as I said. You've seen that slide there. There are video clips, so I'm not going to go too far on it. And you saw this one where they were picking up. So what they do, they windrow everything because of wind is a major problem. So they windrow it and then they pick it up with the head. You all saw the slide for the blokes on the Regen group. Mark, you had it on there, didn't you? Yeah. Okay, so you can actually see and they've got a reasonable yield. Now these blokes are really wide awake. It's a 2,000 hectare cropping operation. They weren't dairy. Water was a problem getting from Theobartus Kloof, so they settled dairies out. They then decided to look at soil health, get that right, and they've got 100 odd hectares where they play with. So they've brought animals in. The problem is they don't have enough animals, but they've been perfecting what they can do right on the soil. You'll see the seed coming in, you'll see the mix that is oats and canola and, what was the third one, there was a pea in there. And they screen that out and then they put it through a laser sorter. So they have invested heavily into this, and they're able to sort the crop out and for market purposes. But here's another one that they've grew only for soil health. So, when I see food, I think of livestock. And these blokes say, no, this is about soil health, and it will pay them. But they can afford to take land out. That's what they're playing with. They've got a crimper roller built for them. Hugo, you want to have a look at this one? If you want to see what it looks like, it's reasonable. But it takes some commitment to go and plant a crop and then just roll it down on the ground. I look at it and think, I wonder how many kgs of meat I could take off that, or wool. But it takes different blokes to do that. Here's the land that is now being rolled, and it's a big piece of land. They're not playing small. These blokes are doing it on scale to show what's going to happen. But here's what we look at. This is their latest planter, and they're actually spraying compost tea behind that. Right in front of the seed, they're spraying compost tea. And they're planting, this is right now, they've rolled the cover crop flat, and now they're busy planting a summer cover crop, and then they will bring livestock in to this one. There's the Johnson Sioux that they've set up. It's still very early days. At the moment, they're buying compost from a static powered compost, and they're also making what we call CMC, controlled microbial compost. So there's the compost tea brewing away. It's in there for 24 hours, and they spray that on the farm. And the results. Now, this is a bloke that some of you blokes know, Peter Stewart, who's from here, and he's doing static powered compost. So what he does is they're filling Port Jackson, they put a pipe underground, they make a cage over it with broken old branches and that's over that. Then they take municipal waste. So it doesn't go to landfill, they take those, they make these big piles. And these piles are about 8 meters wide, 2 meters high, 40 meters long. And then they're bringing dairy slurry for the water source. And these are absolute static pile. And they're taking about 13,000 tons a year through the system. That doesn't go to landfill anymore. It's going straight. Calls it farm from zero to root, and he's really, really good at it. So I do promote him a lot because he's really doing some seriously good work out there. And there you can see the finished product, 12 weeks. So, and the compost tea that they were brewing was done that. They've then put up this one now that those two Toy brothers are making what we call CMC, controlled microbial compost, 30% straw, 43% greens, 18% wood chip, and 19% chicken litter. That's the recipe at the moment. So you'll see them busy building this thing. The multi-species pasture looks like. These animals are growing at 1.74 kgs a day. They really look good on the hook. They didn't give you yellow fat, they gave you white fat. I know people bake that from that, I'm not too concerned about it. But I want you to look at this animal and watch the way he's grazing. Look at his selection. Unfortunately you can't hear the sound, but you could hear him sniffing his food. And when you're putting a monoculture down, the cow just goes chomp chomp like Pac-Man with no choice. But when you put a multi-species down, you'll actually see that he actually sniffs his food, and watch him eat the chicory. We'll go look at ryegrass seed heads, there's fescue here, there's cocksfoot and clovers. Watch how he chooses his food. So just watch his movement. And these animals, there's a big group on here, and we've just moved them into this little piece of ground. There's a lot of back fencing on these pastures, so we get regrowth. But water is the biggest challenge. It's getting enough water to these animals on a daily basis. So that takes a bit of effort. But watch this animal, how he's looking for that, but he will actually go and target seed heads as well. So he's not only looking at the nice stuff, he actually is looking for fibre. And I think on one of these other slides I've got where you'll see a cypress tree. They were short of fibre, and they went and stripped the bark off because they're hungry for fibre. And I said to the farmer, please put fibre down. He didn't listen, and they actually went to creosote poles and they were licking creosote off it. So there was something seriously amiss in the system. So the biggest thing that we're talking about the multi-species pastures or grazing height, and this is one that I want you to take note of, is the grazing height to put at what stage. At 50% graze, you have what actually happens to the roots. And when you start with 70% graze, 90% graze in the second bite, and you can see that what actually happens to get root shrinkage. So leaving high residuals is critical in this game. I cannot overemphasize it. On dairy pastures, you leave 12 centimeters of grass behind the cows. That equates to roughly 1.65 tons of dry matter that we leave residual. We get better regrowth, we don't get root shortening, and because of multi-species, you have to change your whole grazing strategy. So you graze for the average, not for the ryegrass. You don't take and say, I'm only looking at ryegrass, 3-leaf state. We don't look at that. We look at for the average. This one here is a dung pattern. It's a quick video. I'll skip through it, but you can actually have a look at these soils. These are seriously working. Unfortunately, it's not my work, it's someone else's work. But have a look at how these dung beetles chew through that dung pat and turn it into mush and into the soil in no time flat. It's seriously impressive, if that's the kind of thing gets you. But it does me, I enjoy that. Okay, one thing as I say is you don't have to have goals. What are your goals on the farm? I want to get increased carrying capacity. We cannot keep on growing vertically, horizontally. We can't buy more and more land. It's not there. So what we're going to start looking is how can we make our soils more productive? How can we carry more per hectare? How can I yield more per hectare? At what cost? And these are things, these decisions you've got to make. What are you trying to do here? Reduce fertilizer, improve soil and plant health, reduce purchase feed costs. If you look at your purchase feed versus homegrown feed, look at the cost if you're a livestock farmer. You cannot equate those things. You probably can grow food at about 10% of the cost of purchased food. It's not good for the feed companies, but unfortunately, I'm on your side. The big things we're going to start looking at how you're going to broadcast, and now the biggest limitation, in fact, I see you fellows are sitting with, is planting equipment. That is going to be a challenge. We've got to overcome it somehow. We've got to start looking at how we can give you planters or get planters to separate the big seed from the small seed and get them at the right depth, at the right rates. You cannot plant at 55 million seeds a hectare, as we're seeing in some blokes. I often see seeds at 25 million hectares. If we talk about DHL, go look at the brochure, 25 million seeds per hectare planting with a 10% survival rate after a few months. That's the seed company selling you that knowledge. Something's wrong with the picture, chaps. We cannot think that way. So I'm fairly vocal about it. Looking at the seeding rate, timing, and then seed to soil contact. This is the thing that you blokes aren't, and I'm not talking about you blokes, I'm talking farmers generally. Do not get enough seed to soil contact. So even when I plant with a no-till planter on pastures, I still put a drainage roller over the top, not once, twice. You cannot overroll these things. You will not create compaction, but you'll get your seed germination through seed to soil contact. Subsoiling, this is a mono subsoiler, a really good little machine if you've got serious compaction. The work we're doing at the moment to see if we can alleviate compaction without having to do mechanical intervention. And I think we're in the right direction. It's not the place to tell you what we're doing now, but we are getting there, that we can actually get compaction. Pugging is one thing. Hoof action is a thing that creates compaction. But chemical compaction through soil type, a lot of work is going and saying, I change the calcium magnesium percentages. That will not change compaction. It never can and never will. It's bad science. The higher magnesium ratio in your soil, the more magnesium, the clarier your soil, the drier it gets, the tighter it gets. It's a simple thing. You cannot lime it enough to stop that nonsense. So don't go down that road. It's going to be a heartache. I did a farm in Priska. They put 35 tons of lime to get the calcium magnesium ratio sorted out. They called me and they said, look, there's a problem here. They had to abandon the pivot. The pH was 8.5 kCl before they started. Then they put 35 tons of lime, and then they say, well, what went wrong? Well, come on. There are no tablets for stupidity. And you can see, this one here, we're using it, again, the farmer, he didn't need he didn't have compaction. But he was told, oh no, you must get rid of compaction. Well, if you don't have compaction, then why are you aerating? Come on, that's diesel, that's time, that's equipment, everything is wrong. Now, you wonder what he did that. But then you're going to see who was advising him and say, well, why did you do that? Oh no, all the other farms with compaction. They might have pegging, but they haven't got compaction. Big difference. As I said, we've done different planters. There's some tine, there's coulters, there's a combination of tine and coulter. These are things that we start looking at, and it's about cracking that surface, getting the seed in the right place at the right depth. That's really what it comes down to. This was the first planter, there were no planters for cover crops in the Western Cape when I started. So this was my first attempt at becoming an engineer. And it actually really worked. So what we've got here is a really, really strong coulter here that cuts through the soil. We've got the tine in here. You can see the seed is back there. We did modify it later to get the seed a bit shallow. Then we've got these hoses with the fine seed coming down just in front of the seed. The little fan here that actually stops the seed in the right place. And that one's working. I think it was 2004 I designed that one and we built it, and it's still working to this day. And the farmer uses negligible amount of seed. As I said, the rollers, you just cannot, that's one of the best tools on the farm if you're going to plant any cover crop, whether it's for livestock or whether it's for cropping. A cover crop needs a roller. This little combination was really nice. This is a red oats. Red oats I don't think many of you guys are familiar with, but it's a very broad leaf, goes to seed much later than your white or black oats. It gives a lot of biomass. Then we put in normal fire oats and then ryegrass underneath. This happened after a farmer did a massive hailstorm, took his maize out. We had no fertilizer. We put this in quickly. We were able to graze it, get the pastures back up to speed, and then the balance went in for silage. So it's just thinking quickly out the blocks, and it was really, very affordable to get that. Here we see the role of a radish. A lot of people talk about the tillage radish. Unfortunately, they're not very palatable. So if I'm going to put a radish in the ground, I'm going to put one in that animals can eat. You see the mycelia around there, and all your brassicas are in actual fact steroids. It puts your bacteria on steroids. They really love brassicas. So I would doubt I'd put a cover crop in place without a brassica component, whether it be kale or swede or fodder rape or one of those. I would put them in. The big one that we look at on the radishes and turnips is the leaf tends to lie out sideways. You get a lot of shading. So it's got to be a little bit careful on that. And you'll see a black mustard. That's a true black mustard. Well, actually, that was white mustard. That one there. And that one is a real biofumigant. And as I said, the seed companies have to come to the party and do their homework if they're going to sell you these things. Peas on the left, field peas, one of the few plants that has a uriard, and so we look at the protein groups, and it's one of the slides I'll show you just now. So we put those in there, you have your sunflowers, but the big thing is this soil on the right is actually Western Cape soil. Mediterranean climate, everyone says bad soil, not bad soil, farmed out soil. The soils that's been abused. And you can turn them around, look at the structure on those soils, and you're going to hear the planter just now. I'm going to go through fairly quickly now, and you'll hear his planter, I hope, that rattling and clattering through the soil as it hits the stone. We're sitting at 85% stone fraction, 15% soil, that's we farmed it. So my fertilizer bill is actually quite cheap with them. There's the tree I was talking about where the beef cows needed fibre. There they went, and they stripped that tree. And the farmer didn't see that. Until I pointed out and he said, oh, that's what it was. You put hay in, ate about 2 kgs a day to start with. This is a multi-species we put in behind the cabbages, and this cleaning up residual, and then the beef will go into that. Just showing you some of the options we got. We're going to go through all the benefits and drawbacks. They're all there. I think grazing management.